Crime, Wine, and Chaos contains adult language and graphic content. Listener discretion is advised.
It ain't no fun if the homies can't have none, Chaos Kids. I'm Amber.
No.
I don't know why that was in my head today, so it needed to come out.
I don't either.
Mm-hmm.
I'm Naomi, and this is Crime,
Yes,
Wine, and
it is.
Chaos. What the?
Listen.
No.
Listen. I can't explain what this brain does.
You know what? We're not even going
I'm
to
a
try.
90s kid. What can
We're
I
not
say?
even You know, when Sebastian was like 4-ish months old, he was going through a colicky period.
Was that when he would only listen to Big Pimpin'? Oh.
No, it was not Big Pimpin'. What happened was he would go into colicky is like when they basically cry and you can't figure out why. So he would cry and cry and cry. And the only thing that would stop him from crying is if I had to hold him against my chest and like do the mom bop, right? Like bop around with him and put on Snoop Dogg.
That tracks.
Gin and juice
There it is.
worked every time.
Same. If I'm fussy, gin and juice works for me too. I mean, it does. Oh.
So,
Yes.
sister, how are things? What's
are
going
good. Nothing. This is our second time again this week.
I know it's only been 2 days since I
so
saw
I've
you
got
last.
nothing.
Not a lot has happened.
No.
Yeah, I mean, all I've done in the last 2 days since I saw you was work on the story for
Samesies.
today.
Well, I went to my job that feeds me, because
Right.
that's the thing that
Right.
I do.
You know, one of these days, this will be the job that feeds you. I'm putting that out there
Yeah.
into the universe. That's the
That's
dream,
a good
right?
segue.
Yeah.
We have a new Chaos Kid.
We have a new Chaos
we
Kids
do
Club
have
member.
a new Chaos Kids Club member.
I did not
Sorry,
know that.
was as of today. Yeah.
Oh, yay.
Michaela D. Welcome.
Michaela, thank you so much. We're so glad to have you. This is
And
exciting.
Michaela's going to be hearing this like 4 weeks after they joined, but rest assured,
Or 5,
rest
something
assured,
like
we're
that.
acknowledging it day of. We're just recording in advance. We didn't forget about you for 5 weeks.
You guys, we took a break and we jammed in a bunch of episodes. So hopefully we're like 5 weeks ahead of schedule right now. So
Well, we
For
can't
now.
talk about anything that's current because it'll be irrelevant by the time this airs. So
right, but it's never irrelevant when a new member joins the Chaos Kids Club. That is always
that's the gift that
relevant.
keeps on giving.
That's right. Thank you so much, Michaela. So
Thank
glad
you.
you're here.
And I'm drinking a pinot from Johan Vineyards, which is in Willamette Valley.
Willamette. Is it Willamette or Willamette?
I'm going to pretend like you didn't say that. It's Willamette.
Damn it, Willamette.
Like Volcanoe.
Putting the wrong emphasis on the wrong syllable. Sister, we both have, you have a Mama Jamma, I have a Mimi Jimmy. So we really need to get
this
into
ball
it.
rolling.
Okay, I'm going to tell you about the murder of Daniel and Linda Broderick.
2? Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to start out with Elizabeth Ann Biseglia, who was born in Bronxville, New York in November 1947. She was the third of Frank and Marita's 6 children. Frank owned a successful family-run plastering business that he started with his brothers. Marita's family was Irish-American, and Frank's family was Italian-American. Both families were hardcore Roman Catholics. Frank and Marita were strict and had high expectations of their kids. The Bisiglias were not born to affluence, but aspired to a higher station in life through business success, education, and a household focused on respectability. Okay. Elizabeth, Betty, was raised to be a wife, and not just by her parents and by the all-girls school that she attended, but even by her peers. This was the vibe in Betty's world, right? Her whole world was molding her to find a husband, have his kids, and take care of the household.
I'm sorry, what year is this?
She was born in 47.
All right.
All the Biseglia children attended private Catholic schools. Betty attended Maria Regina High School in Hartsdale, New York, and graduated from Eastchester High School in Eastchester, New York in 1965. In that same year, at the age of 17, Betty started at College of Mount St. Vincent in the Bronx, where she was studying for a degree in early childhood education through an accelerated program. She was also taking classes towards a minor in English. Early that school year, her parents gave her permission to travel out of town with friends to attend a Notre Dame football game. Betty was still living at home and, in fact, would live at home all through college until her wedding day, commuting to college in a sporty little MG.
It's interesting that she's going to college when her life goal is to be a wife.
I mean, education was important to the family. Plus, you know, a lot of them are going to school for an MRS degree, you know? On the night of the football game, at a dance after the game, Betty
Nailed it.
Betty met Daniel Broderick. Dan was born in Pittsburgh in 1944, the eldest of a very large Irish Catholic family, 21 at the time and a pre-med senior about to graduate.
I just realized what story this was. Didn't we talk about this recently?
No, I don't think so.
I thought so, and you said I hadn't heard of that, and I was like, "Oh man, that's a fucking doozy."
Did you?
Yeah.
I did not put that together. I'm sorry. Did I take one of your stories?
Keep going.
Okay. He was a pre-med senior about to graduate. He introduced himself to Betty at the party by writing on a napkin, Daniel T. Broderick III, MDA. When Betty asked him what MDA meant, his response was, medical doctor, almost.
Cute.
The two started dating immediately, and they were a handsome couple. Dan was thin and dark-haired. Betty was trim and blonde. And the next 3 years, Dan would travel back and forth from Cornell Medical College in New York City to the Biseglia's home in Bronxville to spend time with Betty, sometimes taking her with him to Pittsburgh to visit with his family. Both attended college. Both had big dreams. Both were clean-cut, fresh-faced kids from large families and were raised on the ideologies of hard work pays off. They even loved the same song, a song by Johnny Mathis titled Until the 12th of Never. The two married in April 1969 at the Immaculate Conception Church in Tuckahoe, New York, and honeymooned on a Caribbean cruise, and later stayed with friends in St. Thomas. Betty returned from her honeymoon pregnant with her first child, daughter Kimberly, born in January of 1970. Betty continued to work until the day before she gave birth. Afterwards, she continued to hold down several jobs and devoted herself to home and motherhood, which she stated had always been her only ambitions. Yeah. Betty quickly became pregnant again and gave birth to their second child, Lee, a daughter, a year and a half later in July 1971. Dan had graduated from Cornell, and he started a medical residency. But only a few months in, he decided to change careers and enrolled in Harvard, intent on becoming a medical malpractice attorney. Through these years, they were virtually destitute, living for a time on food stamps, moving in and out of dormitories and apartments. Moving to Boston, Dan continued to go to college and devote himself to his studies full-time, while Betty held down a multitude of jobs to support her new family, even resorting to selling Tupperware door-to-door in the cold of winter while holding her babies in her hands.
And this is actually like a really unique education for a malpractice attorney to also be an MD.
Have a medical degree?
Yes.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yes. Betty was never too proud to work. At the same time, Dan maintained an image of a wannabe lawyer, so he wore a wardrobe of well-cut sports coats and ties on campus, earning the nickname Dapper Dan.
Oh. Okay.
In early 1973, after Dan graduated from Harvard Law, the Brodericks moved again, this time to the La Jolla area of San Diego, so that Dan could complete a summer clerkship in Los Angeles. On advice from an attorney friend, Dan sought a legal position in San Diego where he wanted to be, according to Betty, a bigger fish in a smaller pond. Doubly degreed in medicine and law, Dan was a catch to most legal firms and soon accepted a position as junior partner with Carrie Gray in San Diego.
Okay.
Stoked at their new social and financial position, the couple celebrated by dropping their first down payment on a beautiful home in the Coral Reef neighborhood. Money didn't pour in right away. To help supplement their income, Betty taught religious classes at the local school. In 1976, their third child was born, Danny Jr., and in 1979, she received a real estate license and gave birth to their fourth child, Rhett. Wow. And sometime, I think in 1980, I forgot to write this down, in 1980, they did have a fifth child, a boy, but he died, I think, at about 5 days old.
That's awful.
So it took 5 years before Dan finally began to earn enough money that Betty could stay home. Okay. Those early years created the small cracks in their marriage. Dan became obsessed with not only his work, but with embedding himself into the social life that he thought was basically mandatory if he was going to become one of San Diego's big shot attorneys. He would get to work every morning at 5 a.m. and spend most nights after work with his colleagues and associates. Betty saw very little of him. While she cooked and kept house, Dan was usually in one or another Irish bar trading law stories with his partners or singing Irish songs with his fraternity, the Friendly Sons of St. Patrick.
What a douche.
Yeah. And while he was still laying the foundation for his career, still a junior partner and all, his wardrobe continued to be name brand. Betty's discount store. In fact, she didn't even own a washer or dryer until well into their marriage, and she lugged her and the children's not name brand clothing to the laundromat.
This guy sucks. I mean, no disrespect to the victim, but he sucks.
I mean, it's like that Solomon guy with Carolyn Wormus.
Yeah.
Right? Betty totally supported Dan when he chose to leave the offices of Carrie Gray in 1978 to try his hand at his own law practice. Some say she even pushed him to do it. She helped him decorate his new offices and sat with him in the evenings to choose the right decor for a respectable law office. And for a minute, Betty thought Dan was becoming more of the kind of husband she had hoped for now that he wasn't spending every night with his drinking buddies. He would work late at the office, but come home immediately afterwards to share with her the day's events. He even hired a maid to help her around the house so she could spend more time in activities with the community clubs, which she enjoyed immensely. Dan's new law practice quickly became very successful. Because of his dual degree in medicine and law, he soon gained a reputation in Southern California as the lawyer to seek in medical malpractice cases.
God, and I bet the payouts for those cases are fucking huge.
They can be. He eventually was so sought after that if the settlement was expected to be in the low six figures, he wasn't even interested in it. And as the money piled up for the Brodericks, their marriage began to deteriorate. On a family vacation, the two had a huge fight when Dan spent more time at the hotel bar than he did with Betty and the kids. Dan was constantly berating Betty for her spending habits while she insisted she was spending the money she had earned selling real estate. All the while, Dan himself never failed to invest in a property that showed up on his radar or on the wardrobe he claimed he needed as a man of his profession.
No kidding. He's complaining about her spending?
Right. The maid wrote home to her family that she didn't like Dan. She said he was cold and unfriendly and intimidated Betty. A neighbor of the Brodericks said Betty's demeanor would change every afternoon around the time that Dan was going to come home from work. She would stop laughing and panic and run around the house picking up all the children's things because Dan hated to have it underfoot.
Wow.
When he was around, she was a completely different person and seemed afraid of him.
That's awful.
Dan didn't only invest in his wardrobe, but his entire appearance. He exchanged his glasses for contacts, got a hip new haircut, and had a nose job.
Because he was kind of dorky initially, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Betty, on the other hand, was entirely focused on the children and the home. She decorated for every occasion, made sure the kids were at all the best schools, and took part in extracurricular activities. In early 1983, at a party of lawyers that Betty attended with Dan, Dan encountered Linda Kolkena, young, blonde, and beautiful, Dan noticed her right away. Linda was a former flight attendant who was now a freelance receptionist for another attorney. 21 at this time, she had no paralegal experience, definitely no medical malpractice insurance experience. She couldn't even type.
Oh.
Not long after that, Dan hired her as his personal assistant anyway.
God. This kind of shit is so triggering for me. A little
Is it?
bit. I don't know why. I've never been in this situation, but I'm mad for Betty.
Right? I mean, yeah. Linda Kolkena was born to a hardworking middle-class blue-collar family in Salt Lake City, Utah. She had a high school education and had worked briefly for Delta Airlines until she was fired. The details are sketchy, but supposedly she had been coddling and sitting on the lap of a male passenger, which ruffled the feathers of other passengers who filed complaints about
That's
it.
a weird thing to do. God.
And after being terminated, Linda earned money as a temporary receptionist for a number of clients, including a legal office. Betty was suspicious from the start. But are your cats mad at you?
Can you hear that?
Yes. It sounds like somebody's murdering your cats.
Know if I should let them in. I'm going to let them in, and I'll see if that ends up being a bad idea. Because they're not stopping. God, Tora, get it together. Jesus Christ.
All right. Well, at least the screaming's not happening anymore.
Yeah, wow.
So, Betty was suspicious, but she played it cool until she had something more to go on. She did consider at first that she might have a mild case of paranoia. Her friends kept reassuring her that Dan was not the kind of man to cheat on her. But then they went on vacation to New York City that summer, 1983, and Betty caught Dan hidden away in an alcove off the hotel lobby, calling Linda on the phone.
What a jerk.
When the family toured England, she discovered Dan had sent flowers to Linda.
Oh.
Dan was getting more and more irritated by Betty's badgering about Linda and insisted she was imagining things. According to Betty, Dan's attitude with her was like, women are waiting in line to replace you.
What the Fuck right off, Dan. Fuck off.
That fall, Betty called up one of Dan's paralegals and just asked her straight up, like, what did she know about Linda and Dan? The woman denied knowing anything, really because she just didn't want to get involved. But when the woman approached Dan to tell him he should just come clean with Betty, Dan fired her.
This piece of shit.
Betty went to therapy to work through her doubts about Dan's fidelity, but the visits abruptly ended when her suspicions were validated. Betty showed up at Dan's office unannounced the day of his 39th birthday with the intention of surprising him. Betty showed up with a bottle of champagne and a dozen roses. His secretary told Betty that her husband was out, but she wasn't sure where. Linda's office, next to Dan's, was also empty. Betty hung out for a while to wait for Dan to get back, and she saw crumbs of cake on Dan's desk as well as empty wine bottles and balloons. Clearly, there had already been a celebration of some kind. Then she peeked into Linda's office and saw a portrait of Dan as a teenager hanging behind her chair.
Sorry.
It's fine.
What do you mean? A portrait of Dan as behind Linda's chair?
In Linda's office.
Oh, no. That is weird.
That's weird,
That's
right?
really weird.
Dan and Linda never did return to the office that day.
Oh.
Betty drove home, marched to the closet, and began ripping out all of Dan's expensive tailor-made clothes. As her children watched, wide-eyed, Betty made trip after trip to the backyard with armloads of Dan's clothes. She dumped them into a giant pile, poured gasoline on it, and lit the match.
This is right out of Waiting to Exhale. It is trash. Psh, flicking her cigarette.
As thousands of dollars of Dan's expensive clothes went up in flames, their children watched and cried. Despite the damage to his wardrobe, there was no fighting that night when he came home. He was quiet. And what little he did say was to reiterate that Betty had an overactive imagination.
Why doesn't he just fess up? Like, what? Okay.
Yeah, but this time she didn't believe him. According to Betty, he was trying to purposely antagonize the situation. In bed, she would hear him muttering Linda's name over and over as if dreaming about her. But Betty could tell that he wasn't asleep and that he was merely pretending.
Oh my God. That is a fucking fucked up thing to do. What the fuck? That's gross.
It's almost like he wanted her to leave. Like he wanted her to initiate it. I don't know. The last day of February 1984, Dan finally confessed his affair. Not as an apology to Betty, only to explain it as the reason why he wanted a separation. Prior to this, the family had moved to a rental house in the nearby town of La Jolla while their Coral Reef home was being repaired. A large crack had been detected in its foundation.
I know. I was
Metaphors
like,
here.
wow, that's kind of
Yeah, right? On the nose. With the separation, Dan moved back into the Coral Reef home while Betty and the children remained in the rental in La Jolla. With Betty gone, Dan redecorated the home to his own tastes. He refused to spend time with the children and did so only when Betty literally dropped them off on his doorstep. By law, he was obligated to pay the family bills, but threw her only a small allowance and decided what that amount would be. And he continued to see Linda, and their relationship was now public knowledge.
This guy sucks.
Dan soon served Betty with divorce papers.
And she's up against a fucking attorney in her divorce. This poor woman.
Betty was enraged, and she was going to make sure everyone, especially Dan and Linda, felt it. One afternoon, Betty stopped by the Coral Reef house to visit her children and saw a Boston cream pie on the counter. The housekeeper told her that Linda had dropped it off for Dan. It was his favorite kind of pie. Betty proceeded to march the pie up to what used to be their bedroom and smeared the pie all over the bed and all over Dan's clothes. When Dan came home to this mess, he filed for a restraining order against Betty to keep her out of the Coral Reef house.
Oh, Betty.
2 days later, Betty threw a wine bottle through a window at the Coral Reef house.
Shit. We're escalating.
The police were called, but they chose not to do anything about it because this was rich people's problems. Later, Betty would say that Dan pushed her into madness with his manipulation and mind games. She claimed that he could have quietly kept having an affair with Linda, but he was pushing Betty so she would divorce him and he could maintain the image of the good guy.
That's what it sounds like.
He maneuvered Betty and the kids into the rental house, into a rental car, all in his name, and then got himself back into the family house with all the equity. By this time, Dan was president of the San Diego County chapter of the American Bar Association. And Betty was struggling to find an attorney to represent her in the divorce since all the best divorce and property lawyers in San Diego were also friends with Dan.
Oh, God.
She found a lawyer in Los Angeles, a good one, who agreed to represent her, Daniel Jaffe. He advised her that she needed to adhere to the restrictions of the restraining order or she would hurt her chances when they finally went to court. But Betty couldn't stop. She continued to vandalize the Coral Reef home. She screamed at Dan in front of neighbors whenever he dropped the children off at her house for visitations while the kids cried. And once, when she heard Dan had taken Linda away for a weekend getaway, she went into his house and smashed a window. Dan's retaliation in these instances was a judicial order called an Order to Show Cause, or OSC. In the next year, he used it repeatedly to haul Betty before a judge to explain why she should not be held in contempt of court for violating the restraining order. Dan was documenting every incident in a court of law as he built the case against Betty for the pending divorce. The first OSC cited the Boston cream pie mess and the broken windows. In time, the list of OSCs would expand to include a tossed toaster, a smashed stereo switch, a broken bedroom mirror, more windows, and countless other similar offenses against his property. No incident was too small for Dan to file an OSC. He detailed every item and years later listed them all off in divorce court. Quote, "You pounded a hole with a hammer into the wall. You broke the answering machine with the hammer. On another occasion, you broke the sliding glass doors. You spray painted the wallpaper in several rooms, including the fireplace. You broke the television." The list went on. And attorney Jaffe was beside himself. He told Betty, quote, "If you can live within the guidelines, I will continue to represent you, but I want to spend my time on finding what happened to the Broderick monies and getting you some of them rather than spending my time keeping you out of jail."
Ooh, Betty.
Betty spent Christmas 1985 by herself. Linda and Dan had taken the children on a winter vacation. So she broke into the Coral Reef house and ripped open every gift under the tree marked "To Linda." She threw them all over the living room and then smashed a mirror in the living room and left.
How is she getting in?
I don't know. I mean, she lived there. Maybe she had a key. Maybe she knew how to get in certain windows or something. I don't know.
Wow.
For the next few years, it went on like this, with Dan utilizing his professional colleagues and his acumen as an attorney to ensure that all legal outcomes were in his favor. Where Betty was desperate and volatile, Dan was calculating and strategic. By the mid-1980s, Dan had been earning nearly $2 million a year and was considered one of the men to watch in Southern California. He was photographed out on the town in the Who's Who section of the local rags, and in early 1986 decided to move to a new house. He bought an old 2-story pillared colonial mansion in Balboa Park and spent a bunch of money to redecorate it to his taste, all the way down to the door hinges.
Wow. Fuck.
When Dan went to sell the Coral Reef house, Betty refused to consent to the sale. But Dan got himself a court order to sell without her consent, and an appointed proxy signed the transaction papers on Betty's behalf.
What?
And even though she received her share of the proceeds from the sale, she was livid. She drove her suburban van through the front door of Dan's fancy new mansion.
Shit, Betty.
This one finally got a rise out of Dan, and he yanked Betty from the car and slapped her.
Okay.
Police arrived, and Betty was taken to a mental hospital on a 72-hour hold, kicking and crying in a straitjacket where she refused to cooperate with the doctors that tried to sedate her.
What,
I know.
What's her goal
I know.
here? For him to come back to her after? This is what I don't understand about people that do this and be acting cray. Do you think that eventually they'll...
I don't think she's thinking.
No, she's not. But
there's
in general,
right?
do you think eventually the people will concede and be like, okay, we'll get back together. I can see you're upset. No. What?
No, I don't think they're thinking that at all. I think that they are thinking, this person has destroyed me. I'm going to destroy them.
Oh, but she's just destroying herself.
Yes. During her 3-day stay, she repeatedly said, "Looky here, he is the crazy one, not me." When they released her, Betty was faced with another of a long line of unending OSCs that Dan was piling up against her. A divorce hearing was set for July 16th, but Betty made no preparations and, in fact, fired her lawyer. She did not show up at court the day of the hearing. The judge ruled this defaulted her claims to all properties and custodies, and Dan took everything he wanted: full custody of the 4 children, reiteration of the restraining orders against Betty, and a ban on visiting rights for Betty until she submitted to psychiatric care.
Shit.
As for support or alimony, he would continue to pay her what he had been paying her, $9,000 a month, until another trial would formalize other financial arrangements, including property and insurance settlements. Even though Jaffe was officially off the case and had nothing to gain or lose from the court's decision, he was pissed that it took advantage of Betty, who was mentally incapable of defending herself.
Why didn't she show up? Any explanation?
No explanation. So Jaffe contacted Dan's lawyer, stressing Betty's right to a guardian ad litem. Quote, unless I hear from you concerning the setting aside of Mrs. Broderick's default, I plan to contact the legal powers that be and the bench in San Diego so that someone is made available to protect Mrs. Broderick's legal right. Suddenly, Dan had a change of heart and even paid Betty the retainer for a new lawyer, William Hargreaves. Hargreaves also did not last long as Betty's counsel, but he did make an interesting observation in the short time he was involved with the Broderick saga. Hargreaves' opinion was that Betty was beyond legal help since she, quote, couldn't understand that life was possible without Dan.
Oh.
He found Dan's drive to control everyone and everything obsessive. Hargreaves implied that he was worried about a violent conclusion in this case.
Mm-hmm.
Betty was never deterred from her mission of making Dan's life miserable, and the conflicts between them were a near weekly occurrence.
God.
Starting right after Dan moved to Balboa Park in 1986 and continuing through and after the final divorce judgment in 1989, Betty conducted a near constant campaign of phone calls directed more at Linda than at Dan. At all times of the day and night, she would call and leave obscene messages on the answering machine. Court orders and even a brief incarceration only spurred these calls on more. When Linda was there to answer, she laughed them off.
Oh, I bet that pissed her off.
But the kids didn't find any of it to be funny at all. They heard some of the messages and heard their dad's opinion of their mom.
Yeah.
One of her messages said, "This is a message to fuckhead and the bitch. You have one hell of a nerve dumping the kids here on the sidewalk and zooming away without making any attempt to communicate with me about my plans for the weekend. Make me sick, both of you. I have a good mind to dump the kids back on you and drive away. Call me. We have a lot to talk about, asshole. And come pick up your 4 children that you're working so hard to have custody of. Congratulations. You can have them."
Oh. Okay.
Their daughters were turning to drugs, and the school counselors told them their sons were on the verge of suicidal.
Oh.
When the children testified in court, they described Dan as a man they hardly knew, who was rarely at home. They described Betty as a woman so preoccupied with her own anger that she forgot to be their mom.
Yeah.
Some of the conversations between Betty and her kids were recorded as well. In one, 12-year-old Danny begs his mom to quit screaming at Dad so Dan will let them visit her again. Betty says to him, quote, "I was the best mommy in the whole world and the best wife in the whole world. It's not my fault your father is such a fuckhead. I cared about my family enough to put up with him fucking Linda for 2 years."
Oh.
This is what she said to her 12-year-old.
Wow. Wow. Betty. Does she not have any friends that are intervening and saying, I think you need to talk to someone. I think you need to go to counseling. I think, like, she is completely spiraled out of control.
By all accounts, this is how she talked at all times everywhere she went, and she didn't have friends after a very quick, because she was like this everywhere, all the time.
Just obsessed with it.
Yes, and just crass and obscene in everything she said.
Oh, wow.
Also, during the 3 to 4 years leading to the divorce trial in January 1989, Linda had gained a bunch of weight and lost pretty much all her friends. She literally couldn't stop spewing obscenities no matter whose company she was in. She went to trial representing herself.
No.
Betty was seeking custody of the three children that were still under 18, plus $25,000 a month for 10 years and a $1 million tax-free upfront payment. Considering Dan was a multimillionaire at this point, it wasn't asking a lot. But financially, Betty was doomed. By the end of the trial, she found out that Dan had something called Epstein credits on his side. This is a California state law thing. Basically, at the point of separation, the one paying for everything, Dan submitted to the court that he was allotted credits towards his share of the community property.
Okay.
And the judge agreed. When it all came down to it, Betty owed Dan $750,000 in these credits and cash advances, and Dan was ordered to pay Betty less than $30 in cash total.
No.
Did I say 30? I meant 30,000.
Okay. Yeah.
Did I say 30,000? 30,000.
Okay. Wow.
But it was less than 30,000 total that he owed her.
Oh my gosh.
And done. And Dan was awarded full custody of the kids.
No. That's going to do it.
2 months later, Betty bought herself a Smith & Wesson revolver, claiming that as a single woman living alone, she needed it for her protection. She took shooting lessons and by some accounts carried the gun with her most of the time, even making threats to shoot Dan. 3 months after the divorce was finalized, Dan and Linda announced their engagement and were married on April 22nd, 1989, 10 days after what would have been Dan and Betty's 20th anniversary.
Jeez. Fuck right off.
Linda was concerned for the wedding and asked Dan to wear a bulletproof vest that day, but Dan refused. He did employ plainclothes security just in case, but Betty did not crash their wedding. After the wedding, Betty claimed that Linda taunted her by mailing her facial cream and slimming treatment ads.
Okay.
Allegedly.
Sure.
And Betty started a whole new onslaught of phone calls. Over the next 7 months, Dan's attorneys continued to file documents against Betty, claiming she was still showing pathological obsession with her ex-husband with her relentless, obscene phone calls, and that she was not in the right frame of mind to fulfill the custody obligations. On Sunday, November 5th, 1989, Betty woke very early. It was 2 days before her birthday. She would be 42. Her 2 boys were asleep in the apartment that she had moved into after the divorce on their weekend visitation with her. Enraged by the latest letters she'd received from Dan's lawyers, Betty grabbed that Smith & Wesson and left the apartment. She drove to Dan and Linda's mansion, let herself in the back door with a key that she'd swiped from one of her daughters a few months back. Betty made her way upstairs to the primary bedroom where Dan and Linda were sleeping. It was 5:30 a.m. when Betty walked towards Linda's side of the bed and shot her twice. Once in the head and once in the chest. Linda died instantly. Dan woke up and reached for the phone. Betty shot at him 3 times. 1 bullet hit Dan in the chest. Another hit the wall. The third hit the nightstand. Dan did not die instantly and instead coughed and gagged on his own blood and eventually choked to death.
Oh my God.
Dan was just 17 days shy of his 45th birthday and Linda was 28.
Jeez.
Betty left the house and drove off, stopping at a payphone to call her daughter Lee to tell her that she had just shot Linda and Dan. She claimed that she did not intend to kill them and that Dan was even still speaking when she left and was probably still alive. And then Betty turned herself into police.
Okay.
When they asked her why she had brought a gun with her to Dan's place, she said, quote, "Because I wanted him to listen to me." She claimed that her intention was to make him listen to her, and if he wouldn't, she would commit suicide and, quote, "splash my brains all over his goddamn house."
At 5 o'clock in the morning, she's going to go have a conversation and let herself in with the key that she stole. Okay.
That's right. She said the reason she didn't commit suicide after shooting Linda and Dan was because she didn't have any bullets left. She claimed that she had shot Dan in the heat of passion as soon as she entered the bedroom because Linda yelled, "Call the police." At trial, the question of Betty as the one who killed Dan and Linda was settled. Betty didn't deny it. What her attorney argued was battered wife syndrome.
Okay.
He portrayed Betty as a woman who sacrificed herself in order to be a perfect mother and perfect wife. Through witness testimony, including testimony by Betty herself, he showed how Betty held down 5 jobs in the early years of the marriage in order to help her young husband get through medical and then law school. He argued that without Betty's help, Dan never could have become the successful attorney he was. And then Dan traded Betty in for a younger model. After years of Dan's lies and legal bullying, his position as the president of the San Diego County Bar Association and taunting Betty, Betty snapped and committed the murders without premeditation.
Okay. I mean, yeah, this one's tough because he's not wrong.
He's not wrong.
I coupon clipped your way through law school.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And yeah. And the insult to injury, like if he had just like owned up to the fact that he'd had an affair and was leaving his wife and he had all this money and he just like thrown a bunch of money at her.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. But he wanted her to, why did he want her to suffer? initially?
I don't know.
Like, why?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
The prosecution portrayed Betty as a cold-hearted, selfish, narcissistic murderer who planned and schemed to kill Dan. They played a bunch of the messages that she'd left on Dan and Linda's answering machine and introduced the evidence of her repeatedly vandalizing Dan's house. Their oldest, Kim, testified about how angry Betty was and how she had no remorse about the murders. The lead prosecutor was quoted in a magazine saying, quote, "I've had my fill of Elizabeth Broderick. She was not a battered woman. She was getting $16,000 a month in alimony. She had $1 million La Jolla house, a car, a boyfriend. I see abused women every day with broken bones and smashed faces. Give me a break."
Okay.
But this is, 1989,
Yeah.
1990. This is before we really started to accept and acknowledge that there's lots of ways to abuse people that are not just bashing in their faces.
For sure. But also, yeah, fuck. This one is so hard.
So Betty's first trial ended in a hung jury when 2 of the jurors held out for manslaughter,
Okay.
citing lack of intent. One of the jurors was quoted as saying, "I only wonder what took her so long."
I mean,
The judge declared a mistrial. Betty was retried a year later with the same defense attorney and prosecutor. This trial was among the first cases aired on court TV.
oh.
The second trial was essentially a replay of the first trial, and the jury returned a verdict of 2 counts of second-degree murder. Betty Broderick was sentenced to 2 consecutive terms of 15 years to life, plus 2 years for illegal use of a firearm, the maximum under the law. Both before and after Betty's trials, the case was dramatized across the United States. Betty granted interviews to virtually every television show, reporter, and magazine who contacted her. Betty appeared on The Oprah Winfrey Show twice, Hard Copy, 2020, and Headliners and Legends. At least 5 books were written about her story, and Betty was interviewed by Ladies' Home Journal and countless other magazines. Somewhere along the way, she picked up the moniker Angry Betty. Betty's story was turned into a made-for-TV movie in 2 parts. Part 1 called A Woman Scorned, the Betty Broderick story, and Part 2 called Her Final Fury, Betty Broderick, the last chapter.
I think I saw that, and I think Dan was played by Christian Slater.
No, I don't think
well,
so.
I saw a Betty Broderick story where Dan was played by Christian Slater.
Meredith Baxter received an Emmy Award nomination for her portrayal of Betty. Meredith Baxter was the mom in Family Ties.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's not the one I saw. Good for her.
Betty Broderick has been denied parole twice and will not be eligible again until January 2032, at which time she will be 84 years old.
Gosh.
And that is the story of the murder of Daniel and Linda Broderick.
That's a tough one. Nobody deserves to be murdered.
No.
But my God, what a piece of shit.
He really was a piece of shit.
Yeah. I mean, her attorney was right. He traded her in for a younger, newer version after she was like...
And he used every bit of resource he had to cock block her at every fucking turn and win it on every fucking thing. He wanted to win it on every fucking thing. And leave her with nothing.
Gross. Yeah.
Super gross.
Wow, sister. That was a good one.
Hey, thanks.
You're welcome. Okay.
You got a mamma jamma for us? We got more to go. Hold on.
You're too toasty.
I got to get hold on. Ugh.
Wow.
At least your cats aren't screaming at us
Don't
anymore.
jinx it. It was just the one. It was just Tora. She's upset. I don't know why. She's fine now.
Okay, well,
It's usually Jack, who is vocal.
Well, I just don't close my bedroom door because Shadow needs to be able to come and go as he pleases. And usually if the door isn't shut all the way, he just stays where... Yeah, he's over there right now.
You spoke too soon. Now he's
fine.
starting up again.
She heard
She's
heard
like,
her name.
"Oh, you want more of this?"
So what do you got
I
for
have
us,
the
sis?
Sarah Lawrence College sex cult.
I'm sorry, what?
The Sarah Lawrence College sex cult. This one
Strap
was
in, strap on,
hard
let's go.
to research and a bit confusing. So
Okay.
I'll do my best. Okay.
Okay.
So it's fall of 2010 at Sarah Lawrence College in Yonkers. There it is again.
In Yonkers,
New York.
Okay, which is in that general upstate area that area where Carolyn Wormus
Exactly.
and them
Yep.
were, right? Yeah, okay, Westchester.
So it is a prestigious liberal arts school and definitely attracted the type of kids who were kind of the outcasts in high school, the artistic type, you know. One of the dorm houses was called Sloan & Woods, which was a huge house. It had 8 rooms. And so a group of close friends decided that they wanted to live together after all bonding during their freshman year. In the house was Gabe. There's going to be a lot of people here. So, okay.
Great.
Gabe, Dan, Max, Claudia, Isabella, Santos, and Juliana, and Talia.
Talia?
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Raven was another friend that technically didn't live there, but she was there all the time. It was far
Sure.
enough away from the main campus that they had some privacy. Santos had met Talia in a Roman literature class, and the two instantly connected and started dating. And this was Santos' first girlfriend. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Talia was beautiful and smart. She was driven and knew that she wanted to be an attorney because she wanted to help people like her dad. Talia talked about her dad a lot. She said her dad was her hero, that he was in a special operations unit in the military, and he had been sent to prison even though he didn't do anything wrong.
Okay.
Very shortly after moving into this home, Talia learns that her dad is set to be released. So she asks her roommates if her dad can crash on their couch until he gets back on his feet. And they all say that that would be fine.
Oh, no.
So her dad, Larry, gets to the house. Talia is super excited. Larry talked to the young adults for hours and hours, and everyone was kind of mesmerized by him.
Okay.
He said that he was in the CIA. He even had pictures and documentations to like back up his stories. He said he was working as an FBI informant, and the person who was supposed to protect him put him in jail and tried to ruin his life. And now he was out and was going to pick up the pieces.
Okay.
So now he's living in this dorm house with these college kids. They didn't care too much other than like they couldn't really play their video games all hours of the night because Larry was on the couch in the living room. But
Right.
eventually they all got used to it, and they saw him as like a funny dad in the house.
Sure.
And Larry did contribute. He would cook for everyone and clean up the kitchen afterwards. It was like, and he would cook like really nice, like steak dinners and stuff, which was way different from like, you know, the top ramen that they would have. Yeah.
Top ramen noodles. Yeah.
Then Larry starts to do house meetings where he shares his philosophies on life and like talks to these young adults about how to reach their fullest potential. And they all are just super inspired by Larry.
Oh, no.
He also claimed to be able to help process repressed memories and trauma and give these young adults some clarity. So
Yeah.
Larry first focuses on Isabella, who was Talia's best friend. Isabella was really quiet and socially awkward. She stayed in her room a lot. And Larry starts spending a lot of time in Isabella's room, even staying overnight. And according to Talia, they were just talking, and Larry was helping Isabella work out some family stuff that she was going through.
I hate it.
That year, when the holidays rolled around, Larry called Isabella's mom, Cindy, in Texas, and tells her that Isabella will not be coming home for the holidays because she has confided in him that she was molested as a child and her mom did nothing. And if she has to return to Texas, she will kill herself.
Okay.
Cindy has no idea what Larry's talking about, and she asks if she can talk to Isabella, and Larry says that she doesn't want to talk to you, but Larry is really sympathetic and, to Cindy, and he tells her that even though he can't convince Isabella to go home and he's not trying to punish Cindy, his only concern is being there for Isabella.
Not only does she not know what the fuck he's talking about, she also has no idea who the fuck this guy is.
Right.
Who the fuck are you, Larry?
Yeah.
Okay.
Isabella's roommate said that they watched her go from socially awkward to vibrant after spending time with Larry, and they were all so grateful to him. And they thought of him as a really special person who they could all benefit from.
Okay.
So Santos approaches Larry and said that he wanted to talk to him about his family and some of the things that he has struggled with. And Larry is this great listener and appears to be super empathetic. And so whatever Santos needs to help process, Larry's like, I'm there for you, buddy. Whatever. I'm here. Yep. Larry also audio records everything.
Hallmark sign of a cult. Every cult, they always record everything.
He video records a lot of things too.
Oh, sex, lies, and videotape. Okay.
So Santos said after talking to Larry, he felt like he was understood, and he felt like he understood his family better than he ever had before. And again, the other roommates noticed a huge difference in Santos of just being more vibrant and open and lighter.
Okay.
Then Larry starts working with Claudia. One night, all of the roommates decided to smoke some weed, which was something that Claudia would normally participate in, but on this night she didn't. She said that she couldn't smoke weed anymore because she had schizophrenia and weed would exacerbate her schizophrenia. And this was news to everyone. Because Larry told her she had schizophrenia, right?
Oh, Larry diagnosed her with schizophrenia.
And
Larry, the cable guy, essentially, at this point. Okay.
And Raven, the friend that doesn't live there, but she's always there, she's like having none of this.
Oh.
Claudia was her best friend, and she was like, Larry told you have schizophrenia, and so now it's true, and you need to stop talking to this fucking weird dude. Like, no. Right.
She's not under the spell of Larry.
But Claudia insists that she has schizophrenia. At this time, Dan, one of the other roommates, and Raven were dating. And towards the end of the school year, Dan was starting to feel like the relationship wasn't really working out. And so Dan turned to Larry for help on what to do.
Oh, no.
Dan confides in Larry that he is confused about his sexuality. And Larry tells him that he knows for sure that Dan is not gay and that worry is just dragging you down. And Dan said that he felt so much relief when he heard that. And Larry also told him that Raven was in his way. And so he has Dan call Raven right then and there while they're talking and end the relationship. Yeah, getting rid of people that are... So Raven knows right away that Larry had gotten to Dan. And this was the last conversation that Dan and Raven ever had.
Oh.
Dan's parents, Amy and Charles, said that they did see that Dan was kind of enamored with this Larry guy. And that summer, after Dan's sophomore year, Dan stayed behind in New York in an apartment that Larry had instead of coming home to New Jersey.
So Larry's in an apartment of his own now? Okay. Because I was thinking he was supposed to crash on the couch till he got on his feet, and it's been an entire school year and he's still there.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So it's the summer.
This is also an episode of Worst Roommate
For
Ever.
sure. For sure.
God.
God. It's the summer of 2011, and Dan is staying on the Upper East Side in a high rise that Larry claims is his apartment.
On the Upper East Side of New York,
Yeah.
of Manhattan.
Yeah.
The Upper East Side.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
There he's renovating it. So he also invites, he invites Santos to the apartment and Dan, and he asks both young men to help him renovate in exchange for like staying there for the summer, right?
Uh-huh.
Santos's parents met Larry and thought he was great. And Claudia, Talia, and Isabella are not living there, but they are always there. Like always over at this apartment, right? And Isabella was sharing a room with Larry.
What?
The one that he would stay overnights with. Yeah. She's sleeping in his room and everyone else is like crashing out in the living room because it's like a 1-bedroom apartment. Uh-huh.
Okay. I hate
Larry's
it.
explanation was that Isabella was vulnerable and needed someone to be with her so she could sleep.
She'd have someone with her if she crashed into the living room with everybody else. Okay.
Yeah. So now it's all the same group from the dorm in this apartment. And Larry takes a military approach to whip these young adults into shape. He even makes a playlist that gets played every morning to wake them up, and they start their day with push-ups. And everyone was feeling really good. They were like getting healthy. Their lives were structured. They're like, this is great.
Uh-huh.
Then he starts preaching about how important it was for everyone to embrace their sexuality.
Oh, there it is. I mean, we already know he's doing questionable shit with Isabella, but okay.
And he starts telling Dan that Dan was attracted to Isabella.
Oh.
Yeah. Which was weird because that was who Larry was sleeping with, presumably. But he is encouraging Dan to get together with her. So one night, Isabella came out of her and Larry's room and approached Dan on the couch and started to perform oral sex on him.
In front of everybody?
Asleep. Mm-hmm.
Oh.
And Dan felt like she had been sent out by Larry.
Yeah.
And after that night, Dan felt like he had been sort of like enrolled in some weird sex education with Larry as his teacher and Isabella as his TA. So he would go into Larry's room and he would demonstrate on Isabella what Dan should do and then ask him to show him that he could do it. Mm-hmm.
What? Oh.
Mm-hmm. And it eventually escalated into all three of them just having sex together.
Which one is the daughter again?
Talia. Isabella's best friend.
And Talia's here with everybody. She's one of the people. She's not. Okay.
Nope. At this time, though, Dan said there was a part of him that felt special because he was included into like an intimate setting with Larry.
In the inner chamber.
Yes. Like
where originally only Isabella was invited.
Yes. So by fall of 2011, they are going into their junior year and they are still living at Larry's apartment. Santos had 2 sisters and he is feeling so good with Larry's help that he wants Larry to talk to his sister, both of his sisters. His older sister, Yalitza, starts hanging out at the apartment. At the same time, she was in college at Columbia and she was struggling to make friends. She says as soon as she started to hang out at the apartment, her depression started to lift. By the spring of 2012, they're still at Larry's house. And at this point, Larry is giving them all Adderall so that they can be more alert and continue to advance.
Oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
Also, side note, when you're struggling to make friends in a new place and you're feeling alone, of course you're going to feel better when you get brought into a group of people who embrace you. Like, that's the thing that she needed. She didn't need Larry.
No.
She just needed some friends.
Yes, exactly. Then Larry gets obsessed with woodworking. And he starts filling the apartment with woodworking tools, which was already super fucking crowded. And now there's like saws and like shit that should be outside, like all in this apartment. Yeah. But Larry is like really particular about his stuff. And he starts accusing people, especially Santos, of damaging his things.
Okay.
Even though Santos would know that he didn't damage anything, he would basically be manipulated into a false confession by Larry. These videotapes of Larry interrogating these kids is so fucking disturbing. And you can tell that they're on Adderall. They're almost just like
buzzing. They're like vibrating.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Santos would walk away from these interrogations with Larry, thanking him for holding him accountable and saying that he felt better after confessing to what he had done.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And since Santos was dating Larry's daughter, Larry kind of targeted him the most, right?
Mm-hmm.
He made Santos pay him for all of the things that he damaged. But the list of what Larry accused him of damaging was like massive. So Santos has to hit up his parents for money. And his parents they're immigrants and they do not speak English. And they didn't have a lot of money. So his mom took one of her necklaces to a pawn shop so that she could get the $750 to give to Santos so he could pay Larry back.
Oh my God. Okay. Oh my God.
Mm-hmm. Then an email came out from Claudia, who's living there. She sent it to the dean of the college and CC'd all of her old friends that are, in Larry's house. Or all of her old friends that are no longer in Larry's house, like Raven and the people that are like, this guy's weird, we're out of here. There were a few of them. And the email is all about how great Larry is, and the rumors that he is manipulative and a sexual deviant was a lie. It was a really weird email.
Uh-huh.
She CC'd the dean, but the
Weird.
college didn't investigate anything. They didn't do anything. They were just like, this is a
Okay.
weird email. To the old friends who had been cut off from the Larry's house friends, the email actually just made them even more concerned about what the fuck was going on in this apartment.
Yeah.
Yeah. So back in the late 90s, Larry had two young daughters, Talia and another one that wasn't in this documentary. I'm not even sure her name. He was a successful businessman and had a lot of close friends who were like pillars of the community. Then Larry got indicted on securities fraud and involved with the mob somehow. So he called his best friend, who was the NYPD police chief at the time, and was basically like, you got to get me out of this. And the friend was like, I can't help you. That would be unethical. So after Larry was indicted, his wife filed for divorce and took custody of the kids. And all of his bigwig friends were no more.
Right.
He was originally just sentenced to probation, but got a 3-year sentence after abducting Talia and taking off with her.
Oh.
Yeah. And the apartment that Larry was in New York, that everyone was in,
Yes.
that belonged to a guy that he met in prison who offered for Larry to sleep on his couch until he got back on his feet. And Larry took over the guy's entire apartment and like kicked him out and moved all the students in. He
What?
just took this guy's apartment.
This is Jameson Bachman.
The roommate?
This is Jameson
Yes.
Bachman. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Holy shit.
Yeah. So it's now 2013. It's their senior year. The old friends still see the apartment friends on campus, but they don't see them in social settings at all anymore. They just go to class and go back to the apartment. And Larry is still audio and video recording everything. And according to Larry, inside the apartment was special and people outside didn't understand.
Oh.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
At some point, Santos and Talia broke up and Talia went back to living on campus. So like she's gone, but her friends are still with her dad.
So weird.
Yeah. And then Larry starts deciding when the students were allowed to eat and sleep. And the interrogations of stealing things and breaking things continued. Only now, if the student being interrogated was hungry enough or tired enough, they would just confess to like bullshit sooner. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Then he started physically assaulting the kids. During one of these interrogations, he started accusing one of the students of being in cahoots with his old bigwig friends to conspire against him. Like, you've been talking to the former police chief who was my best friend who fucked me. And these are kids who are like, what?
Oh my God. This is insanity.
Then Larry starts dating Felicia, who is Santos's oldest sister. So there's Yalitza and Felicia. Felicia was attending Harvard, and she had also gone to Columbia Medical School. She was studying to be a psychiatrist.
She's a smarty pants. She went to Columbia and then to Harvard
to be a psychiatrist.
Children of immigrants who don't even speak English. And she's oh my God, she's a badass. Yeah.
And she had come out to visit Santos once, and that's when she met Larry, and she said it was love at first sight for her.
Stop it. No.
Mm-hmm. Felicia was, so she had finished Harvard, and I think she was doing her residency in LA. So she was living in LA, and her and Larry maintained a long distance relationship. They would talk on the phone every day. Then Larry starts talking to Santos about how he needs to get Felicia out of LA. You need to get her out of there. LA is no good. Larry is telling Felicia that people are after her and want to hurt her because she was dating Larry and he had people in high places.
People in high places were coming for him.
Yeah, and that they knew where she lived in LA and that they were coming after her.
And he can't protect her if she's all the way in LA.
To New York where I can keep you safe.
You need to be in this tiny apartment with the rest of us.
And so she is freaked the fuck out and she's like, okay. So she abandons her residency. Yeah.
I'm surprised these kids are even still going to school.
Oh, I know. Yeah. Santos said when Felicia got to New York, she was a shell of who she used to be. She was completely unable to function and in a constant state of like panic attack.
Fuck.
Also, like, she is weeks away from being a licensed psychiatrist and this worked on her. Like,
yeah.
Okay, then we get to the video that is the worst interrogation from Larry yet. And this was an interrogation that was happening to Dan, who Larry sent in to practice his sexual... Yeah.
Yes.
In this interrogation, he is hitting Dan with a mallet.
Holy
and
shit.
clamping his tongue with pliers.
What?
Mm-hmm. He tied a rope around Dan's genitals and pulled. Mm-hmm. It was after this night that Dan started to think like he needed to get away from Larry. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So Dan took his things and left. And Larry would call Dan, and Dan wouldn't answer the phone or call him back. After Dan left, Larry told the others that Dan gave up on being a good person. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Santos is emotionally unraveling really bad, and he's placed on medical leave from school, which left him at the apartment with Larry.
24/7.
Surprisingly, though, they all graduated that year. Yes.
Really?
Mm-hmm. The summer after graduation, a bunch of them all move with Larry to Pinehurst, North Carolina, to his stepdad's property. because Larry wanted to fix up the property as a gift to his stepdad. Yep.
What?
Yeah.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So
What?
they're all out there. They're doing like intense manual labor. Larry put a lock on the fridge and didn't allow anyone to eat without his permission. He was taking several Adderall every morning and basically not sleeping, Larry. So he was just in a constant state of like shouting orders and preaching his bullshit.
Just his brain is just
Yeah.
boiled.
Yeah. Felicia is like breaking down more and more. She almost looks catatonic. It's like wild to see the footage of
Santos' sister.
that he's dating.
Oh my God.
On these videos in North Carolina, everyone looks underweight and on drugs, disheveled and confused.
How many are there with him at this point?
I think 3, 5. Isabella is still
Okay.
there. Deanna is still there. And then Santo and his sisters.
Both
Mhm.
his sisters.
So first to leave is Santos's older middle sister, Yeliza. She leaves in the middle of the night. She just flees the home.
Flees.
Not too long after, Santos leaves. Then the former members are made aware of a website called Claudia Drury, that was her last name, .com. And the website is all about how Claudia has been poisoning people. On the website is a video of Claudia taken by Larry where she is confessing to poisoning people. And it's
What?
really obvious that she is being coerced.
Plus, there's video, so now people can see what Claudia is looking like
Yes.
right now,
Yep.
which is not
Uh-huh.
good.
Yeah. They also find an escort page for an escort named Lauren, but Lauren is actually Claudia.
Oh, no.
I think the poisoning thing was like, they didn't come out and say this, but my understanding was like people that were there and clearly like being drugged and sleep deprived by Larry, like he had them convinced that the reason why they didn't have their faculties was because Claudia had poisoned them.
Claudia was
Yes.
poisoning them.
Mhm.
Yeah.
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 Okay, so one of their old friends contacts authorities and reports this escort page as sex trafficking. He tells
Yeah.
them the entire story about Larry first coming to New York and the cult all the way up to present day. And the authorities are like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, they don't even really take it seriously because it sounds
Right.
so outlandish that it had to be made up.
Right.
So the old friend then decides to reach out to Sarah Lawrence alum Ezra Marcus, who at this time was a freelance reporter, and they ask him for help.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
Ezra starts digging into the story and he talks to New York Magazine about it. And Ezra gets paired up with a reporter from New York Magazine, James Walsh. Yes.
Wow.
James watches the video of Claudia and he wants to know who this Larry is that is filming her and like probing
Right.
her on this video for answers.
Right.
They learned that Larry's last name was not actually Ray, it was Greca. He had changed his name to take on a new identity. They also find out that he was never in the Marines. Mhm.
Uh-huh.
Ezra and James reach out to Larry and ask if they can talk to him about being a cult leader. And Larry is so fucking arrogant and that he's like willing to talk. He's like, yeah, let's talk.
Uh-huh.
He shows them Claudia's written confession in her handwriting, confessing to the same thing that she confessed to on the video. And he confirmed that she was in fact an escort and that that was what she wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
When this article comes out, it makes the cover of New York Magazine.
Oh my God.
So it was after the article came out that authorities got involved. They start talking to the kids that used to be in the cult, and the cult members, like current and former members, start talking to each other. And that's when they all first realized that they were in a cult, except
Right.
not Isabella.
Oh,
Yeah.
Isabella.
So Larry was arrested on 9 counts that included sex trafficking, extortion, forced labor, and money laundering. Two of the female victims listed on the indictment were still in the residence at the time of his arrest. That was Isabella and Felicia.
Uh-huh.
Larry was denied bail and placed into custody. Felicia and Isabella were both like loyal to Larry initially, and they stay in that house together as roommates, waiting for Larry to come back.
In North Carolina or whatever.
At this point, Felicia hadn't spoken to her parents or her family in years because she believed that they had participated with Claudia in the poisoning.
Oh, no. Felicia.
And the only person who had ever been there for her through all of this was Larry. So a few months after Larry's arrest, with him gone for a while, Felicia and Isabella move out of the house. And Felicia is actually starting to heal at this point and realize that she was really manipulated. But Isabella, not so much. She is waiting for him to return and saying that all of the charges brought against him are bullshit. At this time, it had been over 5 years since Felicia had seen her family, including Santos and Yalitza. Like 5 years went by and they were still there. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Because according to Larry, her siblings tried to kill her. So Felicia does start to get the help that she needs, and she's basically getting therapy for coming out of a cult.
Yeah.
When Felicia got into the cult with Larry, she was weeks away from taking her final exam and becoming a licensed doctor, and now all of that was gone.
Yeah.
He took away her career, her friends, and her family until the only thing that was left was him. Yep. Felicia does eventually reconnect with her parents and her siblings. Meanwhile, Isabella is still completely dedicated to Larry, and she's refusing to cooperate as a victim. And so she gets indicted along with Larry.
Oh,
which
shit.
I thought was kind of shitty.
That is shitty. What is she indicted on?
I think it says in here at the bottom what
Okay.
Felicia, Yalitza, and Santos and Claudia all testified against Larry at trial. In 2021, Dan published a memoir called Sloan in Woods about his experience with Larry. Yalitza graduated from Columbia, and Felicia is working as a consultant and hopes to still get her medical license. On April 6, 2022, Larry was found guilty and sentenced to 60 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole. Isabella ended up pleading guilty to money laundering, and it was at her sentencing that she finally condemned Larry for the very first time. She was sentenced to 4.5 years in federal prison.
Wow.
10 years was how long a lot of these kids were.
Well, I mean, they're not kids, right? They're young adults. They were never kids. They were, all, I mean.
But he was in his
all,
late 30s, I believe, early 40s.
When it started?
Yeah.
That. Wow. How did you hear about this?
Because I've been listening to Navigating Narcissists with Dr. Ramini.
Yes.
They had Dan and Felicia. She had Dan and Felicia on in a 2-parter. And I
to talk about their experience.
And then apparently a Hulu documentary, Dan helped create this Hulu documentary. So then I went and watched that.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Wild.
Well, I have no words. That was crazy. 60 years. Yeah. I mean, a lot of cult leaders get away with it. That's pretty.
Fuck.
Sister, you just blew my mind today.
Good. I was afraid
thank you
had
for that.
heard all about that. Just like
No, that was brand new information.
Great.
I was on the edge of my seat.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you for that. Oh, you guys, we did it. That was a mamma jamma today. Hey, go be like Michaela.
Michaela, that's right.
And join the Chaos Kids Club over on patreon.com. Backity/ity yakety yak. Crime, Wine, and Chaos.
Yep. That's right. And give us a review on the apples if you have one.
Please, if you have one, or wherever you're listening, make sure you review the podcast, because the more reviews we get, the more chances there are that other people will find us. So, wow, sister,
Love
I
you
love
so
you so much.
So
That was
fucking
so
chaotic.
chaotic.
Goodbye. Crime, Wine, and Chaos is produced by 8th Direction Records. Artwork by Joshua M. Davis. Music by Jeremy Williams. If you would like to support the show, you can visit our Patreon page at patreon.com/Crime, Wine, and Chaos. Cheers!